behind Obama's radio address, and I just played a clip where President Obama has talked about how he's fixed a broken health care system. No, he didn't. He took a broken system that was broken by the government and broke it even further. He brags about the 500,000 Americans who are going to gain access to health insurance. Okay, well, they always had access. They just didn't want to buy it, or maybe they couldn't afford it. But now they're going to get it for free or at a subsidized price. But what he doesn't mention is the millions of Americans who used to have coverage who now are going to lose it so that those 500,000 can have it. But, of course, the biggest lie that he continues to repeat, he says, by the way, health care costs are growing at the slowest rate in 50 years, as if Obamacare has anything to do with that. Now, first of all, it's not correct when he says health care costs are growing at the slowest rate in 50 years. What he is talking about is health care spending. Now, yes, if I spend less on health care, then my costs have gone down, right? Because what I spend on something is what that thing cost me. But it's not really costs that are going down. You see, healthcare prices are rising so rapidly and incomes are falling that Americans can't afford as much health care as they could in the past because it costs more, not less. So if I used to buy something, but now I don't buy it anymore because I can't afford it, I guess it's true that my costs have gone down. Like, let's say that my barber raises the price of my haircuts. And so let's say the haircuts used to cost $20, but now my barber raises the cost to $30. And I'm just making these numbers up. It's not necessarily my barber, but you'll see what I mean. And let's say I have a limited income. Maybe my income has gone down. So instead of having my haircut once a month, I have my haircut once every 6 weeks. And so my barber costs have now gone down. I'm spending less money on my barber than I was before. But that's because I'm not having as many haircuts. I'm actually paying more per cut. I'm paying $30 for a haircut where I used to pay $20, but because I can't afford $30, I've decided to have my haircut less often. And so my costs to go to the barber over the year are down because I'm not going as often. So that's what the president is bragging about. Healthcare spending is down. Why? Because people can't afford to go because the costs are going up and their incomes are not. That is the truth. So Obama can help destroy the economy and jack up healthcare costs and then brag that we're spending less on healthcare. You see, it's tails we win, tails we lose, heads he wins, right? He can take any bad news and figure out how to spin it into good news, right? I mean, he might as well be talking about all the unemployment as saying leisure is up. Hey, Americans have more time off, thanks. Yeah, of course, because they're unemployed. But, you could spin that into saying, hey, we have more leisure than ever before. Here is the final cut from the radio address, cut number 10.
One more thing. Since I took office, we've cut our deficits by more than half. And that makes it easier to invest in the things that create jobs: education, research, and infrastructure. Imagine how much farther along we could be if both parties were working together. Think about what we could do if a reckless few didn't hold the economy hostage every few months, or waste time on dozens of votes to repeal the Affordable Care Act rather than try to help us fix it.
First of all, if the Republicans and Democrats were working together, the deficit would be bigger, right? The sequester cuts never would have been enacted, and we'd have bigger deficits. So who is he kidding? If the Republicans cooperated with the deficits, they wouldn't have come down the way he's bragging about. And first of all, the only reason that it's been cut in half, and of course it's only temporary, is because it went up so much during the first year. It's like if I took over as a CEO of a business, and then in my first year I lost a tremendous amount of money, but the business was profitable before I took the helm. And then I cut the losses in half. Am I supposed to brag to the shareholders that, hey, since I've been president of this company, I've cut the losses in half? Yeah, but we weren't losing money until you took over, and the losses were huge. And now we're supposed to be happy that they're not as huge. I mean, it's all depends on what you're measuring against, your yardstick or the hurdle that you're up against. But here's the most interesting comment here. The president says that reducing the deficit is going to lead to more jobs. It's going to make it possible. It's going to make it easier to create jobs. And, well, that's true. But if the president is saying that a lower deficit will lead to more jobs, then isn't that an admission that the deficit is leading right now to a loss of jobs, or that the deficit is preventing jobs from being created? Because if cutting the deficit in half is going to make it easier to create jobs, wouldn't cutting it in half again make it even easier? Wouldn't eliminating it completely make it even easier to create even more jobs? Because if reducing the deficit leads to more jobs, then the deficit, by the president's admission, is an impediment to those jobs. Jobs are not being created because of the deficit, which of course is true, because the government has to take that money out of the private sector to finance that deficit. That debt crowds out private investment, which crowds out legitimate job creation. The president is right about that, which means we should have more cuts in government spending. We should have even smaller deficits. But, the president, earlier in his term, he said, look, we need bigger deficits to create jobs. We need to run the deficit up even more so we can have all these government make-work programs. I mean, the whole stimulus was about running a deficit to create jobs. Well, now he's bragging that cutting the deficit is going to create jobs. Well, you can't have it both ways. Which one is it? Do you create jobs by making the deficit bigger, or do you create jobs by making the deficit smaller? I guess the president doesn't even care, because all he wants to do is put a positive spin on anything. No matter what happens, he's going to say, this is a good thing, and it's my fault. Meanwhile, he's going to ignore all the bad things, and if he has to acknowledge that there's something bad, well, that's the other guy's fault. That's the Republicans' fault, because they're obstructing all the things I want to do. When the truth is, if the Republicans gave him carte blanche to do everything that he wants to do, then all the problems would be worse. That's probably the only thing standing in the way of the country. Even bigger problems is that there's some pushback on the part of the Republicans. I mean, the problem is they're not pushing back hard enough. They're letting the president get too much. But that's a topic, I guess, for another show.